Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And we turn to God always first. First of all, with our faults, because I'm like a thorn bush in the sight of God, hoping for God's mercy that maybe one day a rose might bloom from this thorn bush. And Rumi says, a particle of the shade of the divine aid, the divine inayat, is better than thousands of acts of pious worship. Zare saye inayat behtar ast az hazaran kushesh ta'at parast. So we cannot do anything without God's blessing and without God's help. And so we ask for His help and His aid in speaking together today. And the topic, as you know, that I wish to bring to you is an exploration of individuality. And this is one of the great sciences of Sufism, and it's grounded in the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims and the Sufis. And in this regard, very often the topic is broached, the topic of individuality is broached in a number of places in the Quran. So, for example, when Moses is speaking with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is really the icon of the ego self. Pharaoh believes that he is a god. He should, after all, his ancestors, they were all god kings, they're gods, they're treated as gods, people bow to them, they have power. And this is the nature of the constricted self. And Islam is a religion that was brought to try to address this, to soften this stone, to open this tombstone up and let out the spirit that's in it. And Moses is speaking, and Pharaoh says, you're talking about your God, but who is your God? And in the Quran we see, it says, Rabbana, our God, Rabbana alladhi atta kullu shay'in khalaqahu thumma hada. Our Lord who gave to each thing its nature and then guided it. So we see a statement about individuality right there. We see that first there is the giving of each thing its nature, meaning its separate and different nature. And it follows that the guidance would be according to that nature. It must be in accordance with that nature. And since every one of us is different, we should expect that we have, all of us, a relationship with God, but each of us a separate and distinct relationship with Spirit. And the other reference in the Quran that is more frequently quoted than this is when God is speaking to all of the progeny of Adam. And so he pulls in the world outside of time. He pulls all of the essences, all of the seed of all of the progeny, and he is speaking, and he says to them, he says in the Quran, he says, and I cause them to witness about themselves, cause them to witness by asking them, am I not your Lord? They answered, yes, truly, we witness that this is so. Ashhadahum ala anfusihim, alastu birabbikum, qalu bala shahidna. The words used is he caused them to witness against themselves or about themselves, using the word nafs, before they come into this world, meaning they have an individuality before all of us, before we arrive in this world. God himself says he has an individuality when he says that he prescribed for himself mercy. And so we see that the word for self, or individual, is widely used in the Quran. And we don't have a huge amount of time to go into a great detail about more of the background about the nature of the individual essences, but I wanted instead to proceed and speak with you about something that I hope you can put to practical use. And that is the 11 principles that are taught in the Naqshbandi way. And these 11 principles were originally 8 principles that were taught by Abdul Hayy Darr. Gejduvan is a little town that's not far from Bukhara. I was there a couple of years ago with friends of mine, and it's a beautiful place, very, very beautiful place. And Abdul Hayy Darr was one of the greatest of the Naqshbandi, of the Khwajagan. And Bahauddin Naqshband had a spiritual relationship with him, even though he had a teacher in this world, several teachers, including Amir Kulal, but he had called an uwaisi, or a spiritual relationship, with Abdul Hayy Darr. So he reintroduced the silent zikr, for example, because zikr can be audible, it's perfectly fine, or it may be silent. And in the Naqshbandi way, they've had a lot of reversals of practice and viewpoint, and this continues and has continued all through the centuries. It's one of the largest orders of Sufism in the world, so there's a huge amount of diversity. But they all go back to this period. They all refer to Naqshband's name because Naqshband brought these orders together. And since Naqshband was in this spiritual relationship with Abdul Hayy Darr, he reinstated the silent zikr, did a number of other things, and also he adopted very wholeheartedly the first of the 8 principles, meaning the first principles were 8 principles, which later he himself added 3 more. So those 8 principles, which were originated in the time of Abdul Hayy Darr, they are based upon an approach, and the reference in the Quran that is given by Abdul Hayy Darr is the verse, God says, we will show them our signs on the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that He, meaning God, is the real, is what's real, or that this is the truth. sanurihim ayatina fi afaqi wa fi anfusihim hatta yatabayyana lahum annahu al-haq. We will show them our signs outside of themselves and within themselves until it becomes clear that spirit is the truth of the matter. And so what happened is they had 4 practices for the first part of this ayat. We will show them our signs. Who will they show? He'll show Pharaoh the signs, see? When the Pharaoh is born, when I am born as Pharaoh, I am not Pharaoh, I am pure, and I have the fitrat, I have the memory. But soon, with sensation in this world, naturally, I realize that there is a difference between, say, what this feels like and what this feels like over here. I realize that when I want something, when I want my mother's company, that she may or may not be there. I'm merged with her at first, but now I see that I am different. I am separate. She is separate. I am separate. Everything is separate. And this is why when Rumi opens the Masnavi, he does not talk about one separation. He talks about the flood of separations. Vishnu aznai chun hikayat mikonad az judai ha shikayat mikonad. Listen to the reed as it tells the stories of separations and laments, you see? So it's in the plural. And so how can a person be brought back? How can they be brought back? It could be through religion. It should be. The Quran is a medicine. But the Sufis, they noticed something that was predicted in the Quran, that the medicine would be a poison for whoever was not using it properly. It's supposed to be a medicine, but it could become a poison. And so the generations of Sufis who start to look at this, for example, Shabestari says, Bibatin nafs ma chun hast kafir mashaw razi badin Islam zahir. Since it is inside of ourselves that we are heathens, idolaters, don't be so satisfied with this outer Islam, because what's inside is where the infidel is. So they started to realize that there was this tremendous problem, this issue that they had to approach. And this starts the tradition of a critique of the conventional approach, in which Pharaoh has actually captured the process. Pharaoh has set up a mosque, and he is the prayer leader, pretending to call people to God. This is the situation as the Sufis came to understand it. And so you have the tradition, the Malamati tradition, the Ren tradition, the Qalandar tradition based on this. So when you get to Hafez, Hafez says to the devoutly religious person who strives, the Zahid, he says, Buru ay zahedo bar durd kashan khurda magir که ندادند جز این توفه به ما روز الست. He's saying there's only one thing that can save you, which is the wine of love. So Hafiz is saying, oh, go away, oh ascetic, and don't critique, don't attack those who are drinking from the dregs of the wine. See, because that's what was poured down in many of the poems. We see there's the wine of alast. Alast is this verse that I mentioned earlier. It's called alast because in that verse I quoted when God says, am I not your Lord? Alastu birabikum. Am I not your Lord? And this is also regarded as a domain, the domain of not distinguishing, happily at one, the luminous night, full of stars, full of love, full of unity. This is alast, am I not your Lord? Which people forget as they come into this realm. So Hafiz often is talking about the wine of this night. Sometimes it becomes the day, because it becomes the day as soon as one is coming into manifestation, the dawn, the day, etc. And so here what we see, Hafiz is saying, go away, O ascetic, and stop attacking the drinkers of the wine. Because they didn't give, meaning God didn't give anything else but this one gift to us. This one gift was given to us in the day of Alast. And Hafiz and the Sufis are saying, you better find this one gift because nothing else will bring salvation. If you think imitating people in prayer or talking about strange things and miracles and all kinds of, they think this will not bring salvation. Only one thing will bring salvation, is that the vastness of your Lord will outshine your small mind. In this world, we see the dawn come as the earth turns. But in that world, the world of spirit, the dawn doesn't come that way. The way the dawn comes in the other world is that the candle must have the willingness and the intention to be lit. And when the candle is lit, there are hundreds of thousands of angels looking across the plains and across all of the lands of the earth. And when they see this candle, they are pointing. God already knows, but they are pointing towards this candle. And this candle causes 1,000 suns to rise. So the principle of vision, Rumi says, melt all of this body in vision, spiritual vision. Go in vision, go in vision, go in vision. در گداخت این جملتن را در بصر در نظر و در نظر و در نظر. So, coming back to the problem as the Sufis see it, I've tried to explain very briefly to you. And since the body can either be a place of manifestation, God says in the verse, we will show them our signs. on the outside, meaning here, and in this journey through the land. The journey is in a metaphorical realm called majaz. Majaz comes from a word jawz, which means a place of passing through, as well as a place that's metaphorical. You are embodied, therefore you are in the journey. Your embodiment could be a manifestation, a showplace of the divine action, or it could be the tomb of all that is spiritual. Could be the prison, usually is the prison, the tomb, the well. It doesn't need to be that, but that is the way it is in most cases. So the first four principles, which is what we have some time to discuss this morning, will be about this external journey. And inshallah, Kabir has asked that tomorrow do the muraqabah in the morning, then it would be appropriate to do the second four, which are about the internal journey, the zikr, specifically about the practice of zikr. Inshallah, I will explain those at that time, because one could go on for months anyway talking about this, and this way it'll at least be separated. Hopefully in your minds it doesn't become too complicated. There's this journey that we'll first talk about, the external journey, and there's four principles. This is one of the squares. The internal journey, the other square, is superimposed upon the first square, and you have the octagon, which is one of the symbols of the Sufi way. So the first principle of the journey, Kabir mentioned last night to some extent when we talked about being aware of one's breath. Camille mentioned it again this morning during the muraqabah. The first principle is hush dardam, awareness of the breathing, awareness of the breath. First of four that we're going to look at this morning, hush dardam. Because most of the time, the mind is busy. The mind is busy, and there is passion and desire for all kinds of things. Usually, these are things which will bring pleasure to Pharaoh, things that are pleasurable to Pharaoh. They may be physical pleasures, but the physical pleasures are nothing compared to the pleasures of Pharaoh for recognition, for solidifying the myth of his culture that he is eternal, that he will not die. This is the greatest fear of Pharaoh. Anyone who says the truth coming into the kingdom will usually be killed or put into prison. And yet, Pharaoh is not aware of how transparent, actually, not aware of how transparent, even to himself ultimately, this game is. And anyone can look at their own fantasies and observe their own fantasies and see exactly what the story is. So there's, at the same time, a good job of concealing things, and every moment the hand's giving witness, the foot is giving witness, the body's giving witness to the truth in each person. And the first step, therefore, is to become aware. Become aware. So part of this is about an awareness training program. If I was speaking to a group of modern Westerners, I wouldn't give them this background in Islamic thought, and I would just say there's this, the Naqshbandis have an awareness training program. And you think you're having fun as an individual now, just wait to see how much fun you'll have when you get into the vastness, the dissolution of your limited pleasures into the much vaster pleasures of spirit. I think more people would sign up, don't you, if we do it that way? So there's an awareness training program to come into the self. Because all of the Sufis and all of the mystics from every tradition, they say the same thing, huh? The Persian poet says, Agar dar jostujӯی man shatabi, mara dar khud be zudi baziyabi. If you are really in a hurry to try to find me, if you're really in a hurry, then come inside of yourself. That's where you'll find me. If that's what your issue is, if you're in a hurry. Agar dar jostujӯی man shatabi, mara dar khud be zudi baziyabi. So if you're in a hurry, then understand. You don't look out here, look in here. See? So if we become aware, and doesn't this sound familiar? Awareness of the breath, the Buddhists, the Christians, the Jewish mystics, the Hindu mystics, all of them understand this. So this first principle is to be aware of the breath. But as Camille was talking about this morning, let God breathe you. See? Very beautiful, huh? So like you say, well, no, I'm breathing. No, you're not breathing. God is breathing you. Because we have no existence. Our existence is through God, through Spirit. And we have only so many breaths. Which one will it be? Your last one, my last breath, which one will it be? Will I be aware of at least that one? Will I have a chance to at least be aware of that breath? I hope so. But we can't decide these things, can we? So we could become aware of our breath, God willing. Now we could choose to do this. We could expand our awareness. If it's about awareness expansion, I would immediately become aware also of things that maybe I didn't want to become aware of. If you turn the light on in the house and you discover there's a door to the basement and your curiosity leads you to open the door and the light gets into the basement, you may regret. You may regret having turned on the light. But the Sufis say you should have courage because you need to know who it is that is burning plastic, that is polluting the rooms that you're living in. You need to face the truth, the complexity of how amazingly vast the self is at all levels, at the constricted level and at the broader level. So awareness of the breath is, in its most spiritual application, it is where we are aware of the breathing in and out, we are aware of our own presence, and we are adding to this the recognition of spirit or the attribution to spirit. This is not my breath, this is not my existence, I'm here just for a moment. So we think of God. You can think of the breath going out as gently saying, hu, hu. You can think, la ilaha illallah in one breath. You can just remain aware of the breath as a place to keep the mind from wandering. Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Zen, said to enliven the mind without dwelling upon anything. Without dwelling upon anything, meaning without become fixated upon anything. This is a difficult thing to do, but not so difficult if we retrain the attention to come to what's immediately happening in the moment with the breath. So the breath opens us up to our inner awareness. It is It is the awareness of embodiment, but it is directly a connection to our internal state, isn't it? All of us know. In sadness, in anger, in fear, if we start to watch our breath, we say, oh, look at this. My breath is revealing my state. My state is affecting my breath. The word for breath, nafas, is the same spelling, the same word really for self, nafsa. The mercy is called the breath. So the mercy is breathing. So this first principle is very well known in many traditions. There's a lot of intricacy and detail for each one of these principles, but I will simply tell you one last one before I move on to the next of the 4 principles that we're looking at this morning. And that is that sometimes the Sufis, they also hide certain things that they're trying to indicate in the wording of things. We do too, don't we? Punning, double entendre. Hushdar dam. Dam can mean the moment or the breath conventionally, but it has a numerological relationship which is 44, dam. Mim dal, 44, which is al-ahad, the one. Because really, the journey away from separation is a journey to the one. There's really no journey, but there is an apparent journey. So the Lord says, yes, you think you're journeying through the majaz, all the time you are journeying in the one, but I will show you with my signs that all along it was the one. So awareness in the one, awareness of the unity. The next of the 4 principles is nazar bar qadam, which means looking upon the steps, literally, looking upon one's steps. And so if one were a beginner or in a tradition that follows similar practices, then the idea is that for the person just starting out, when they're watching their breath, for example, they're literally paying attention to their breath, and it's very hard to do, kind of like driving a car with a clutch. At first you really have to think how you're going to do it, and then you practice it, and then after that you can never remember how many times you use the clutch, right? But you're doing it. Here you retain your awareness of the breath, but it's no longer a struggle. Now the second principle, gazing upon one's steps, watching one's steps. The idea here is for the beginner in Central Asia, where these practices were developed, they realized that the mind, through the senses, is fabricating this world of illusion, of separation. And that a very powerful one of our faculties is vision. Very powerful. So if the vision were kept restricted, and if you were a dervish and you were trying to cultivate inner awareness, you would walk around literally watching your own footsteps, watching your feet. This is all that I'm describing to you comes from different traditional sources, and then I myself was trained in this practices in the north of Afghanistan 2 decades or so ago. And the most fundamental level of gazing upon the steps is is that you could, and I might still use this at times when I feel like I really am getting away from my center, maybe through passion, then I might come more closely into watching my breath and kind of going on walks and at least reducing it in principle by moving away from stimulation, so to speak, moving more internally. But if we go to a deeper level of understanding of this principle, which in English might even be, you could say, hey, watch your step, huh? It has several meanings, doesn't it? Mind the gap. Or it could mean, watch your step, look what you did. You caused suffering to someone. But at a deeper level, the teaching is that this is, again, part of embodiment and the self that is has become turbid and veiled. Remember, embodiment should not necessarily do this to us. Hafiz is speaking to God, the poet Hafiz. He says, Guftam ki buye zulfat gumrah alamam kard. God says to him, Gufta agar bedani ham u atrah barayat. Guftam ki buye zulfat gumrah alamam kard. Gufta agar bedani ham u atrah barayat. I said to God, I have been led astray in this world because of the fragrance of your curls. So God is pictured as a beautiful beloved with curls that have perfume in them. And this represents the divine names. So the face is God's essence, and the curls is the divine names. And Hafiz liked to make fun of himself. He says, oh God, you see, I am so far away from the truth because you have led me away with your fragrant curls, meaning all of this beauty and all of this chaos and everything, that has what's led me away. And God says to Hafiz in this poem, he says, ah, yes, but if you only understood, if you only knew, this would have been your guide. See, these curls, the fragrant curls would be your guide, and that would not have led you astray. So Hafiz is a great, he's the cognac of the Sufi vintners. You see, he gives you a double dose of wine. And but in this principle, Nazar bar Qadam, the feet are what are touching the ground. The feet are also in your basement, that we talked about. And I was telling the Afghan circle in Hayward the other day, it's easy to be unkind to others when you have a thorn in your foot. It's easier to be unkind, to be cruel, to be untrue to yourself, to be untrue to others when there's a thorn. And as you walk, there are times when you step directly, even though you're trying not to, you step on that part of the foot and the thorn comes into your nerve. And as I said to them, because they're Afghans only, I said, and then I slapped the person next to me, you see. Or I would if they were standing too close. But I look at my faults, my failings. My failings, they reside in the imperfection of the self and the power of the various domains of the individual, the body, lack of food, lack of sleep, some cycles that are incomprehensible, the great power of egotism that constantly wishes to reinstate Pharaoh upon the throne. See, he was finally drowned, but there were thousands of times that God separated the sea for him and came to close the sea upon him, but he found an escape, huh? So, there's a wisdom to opening deeply to the embodied self, to find out what are the motivations. This is something outside of the normal approach of Sufism and Islamic Sufism. Up to a certain point, there may be Sufi psychology that involves the nafs, for example. The nafs that incites people to do evil things. But the remedy is very often kind of not very wise, sort of doesn't really work very well. Very often is what we see, is that we see the traditions of psychotherapy in the West are of value to Sufism, of value to, especially if the psychologists have a spiritual orientation. Because the story is complicated. Think of Rumi's story of the handmaiden and the king, huh? Does it follow Islamic practices where you have your beloved, your wife basically go and marry another man who she happens to be in love with, and she's sick because she's secretly in love with him? Does it follow Islamic practice that the Sufi will then administer poison to him? You see, this is all, of course, a parable, and Rumi says as much. He says, if you understand this, then you understand the whole matter, that there are these levels of the self. And the Naqshbandis think about it like this. Earlier I quoted you the verse between Moses and Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, who is your Lord? Moses says, our Lord, our Lord. The one who gave to each thing its nature and then guided it. So this is a nature that when it is unveiled is the beautiful face of God in some combination of the divine names. You see, not everyone will have the same spiritual experience. Enlightenment is different for each person. But what is true, according to the Sufis, is they will simply be enlightened according to who they always were. Each person will become illuminated according to their fullest reflection of God. And it follows from their point of view that cruelty, heedlessness, greed, all of these constrictions, that they will modify this same self accordingly, meaning according to how God created that self. So the Sufis see that the person's psychological ailment is a multi-layered veil that is precisely fitting the face, the spiritual face of this person. In other words, the illness is also precisely in accordance with a person's nature. The distortion can only be a distortion of what was true in that person, not about what was true in another person. And for this reason, since the kings of rationality, the lords of rationality, they try to murder, but they rarely succeed, but they exile what they cannot bear to have around. There's already too much cognitive dissonance, huh? So they exile them into the basement, and there are people weeping there. There are rooms in the house. I was saying last night that for the Sufis, symbol of the self is the house. And it's also in Jungian thought and other thought, we understand people have dreams. We know they are talking about the self. So I gave you the example last night where Hafiz says, Khana khali kun dila ta manzil janan shavad, ki in havasnakan dil o jan jay lashkar mikonad. Says, oh, go and empty out the house, my dear friend, my dear one. Because these desirous ones full of desire and attachment, they have turned the heart and the soul into an army camp. They've turned you into an army camp. And then I was saying it fits beautifully in English with the idea of a military occupation, and that people are just fully preoccupied with everything but what is real about them, this beautiful land of the heart and the soul. It's occupied. There's a military occupation there, mirroring the military occupation outside in the world at large. So I'm saying all of this so that you understand the importance of gazing upon the steps. It's not as simple as it seems on first glance. It's a principle that has many applications. At the more spiritual end or introductory end, one is trying to retain an awareness inside, an awareness of spirit. In other words, one is actually trying to exercise a certain detachment from reactions, really. But reactions are grounded in our nature. And if you really want to address reactions, you may have to go open the doors in the house. Not that you will allow everything to happen as it wills, no. That you have knowledge, and the knowledge then is applied. When the Sufi in Rumi's story came into this world, it was because the king had seen this physician in another world. And the physician who came in this world, when he met the handmaiden, he said, "Give me your wrist, because I wish to feel your pulse." And this is how they did it in those days, you see. So he knew that her heart could not hide from him, and that all he needed to do was to tell her stories. So he told her stories, a lot of them, until he found out who she was in love with, see. And it was this schlang, he was called, kind of a this despicable knave, handsome fellow in Samarkand, and he was a goldsmith. And he was lured to the kingdom because the Sufi in his wisdom said to the king, "Listen, there is no other way. You will have to trust me. You will have to allow her to have her passion with him." Wow, that's not the usual advice you get, is it? No. You have to allow things to be seen and to manifest. And because if you bring awareness, as I said, there's an awareness training program, and then this Naqshbandi approach. It is not by blocking things off that they will change. It is by bringing awareness to them. And awareness will allow for evolution to take place, for change to take place. So the Sufi has a good friend and a good student in this particular king. This king is a good person. This part of himself. They are all part of himself, see, every one of these characters. And so he says, yes, okay. So the handsome rogue of a goldsmith comes to the kingdom. He's married to the handmaiden, and she was yellow and pale, and she bursts into perfect health. And now what? Well, now the Sufi starts to administer poison. Now, according to the Sufi commentators I have studied with, the poison is jazba. It's not an ordinary poison. It's wine. He gives them wine. See? What Hafez said earlier, huh? Love. If you true love, see, true love. And now, this other love is perfectly, can be very much our friend also. Rumi says, "Ashiki garzin saro gazan saras, aqibat mara badan sa rahbaras." Loving, whether from this side, meaning this world, or from that side, the other world, ultimately, these two loves, they bring us to the other world. So Rumi is, throughout the Masnavi, he is a supporter of love. If you can turn lust into love, you have done a great thing, because love is of the same kind. It may be of a different order, magnitude, but it is of the same kind. Whereas if it's about ego and pleasure and reinforcing the separateness that Rumi mentions in the opening lines of the Masnavi, then this Rumi says, be careful. He says, take this, but only take what you need. He doesn't say don't be. You are an animal. You have instinct. You have desire, but take it according to its measure. Don't overdo it. He says, love, overdo it. Overdo it. He says, because you cannot overdo it. You are too tiny. God is too big, and God is love. So you cannot overdo it. So try to overdo it. Try to overdo love, because it will be good for you. But with lust, with the needs of the body, is be careful. Do it. Take it. We are not of some earth world-denying faith. We are from the path of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he, when he found out that the king of Byzantium had sent a lovely gift of the maidservant, he didn't stay around Mecca with all of the pressing business. He got on his camel and rode up there as fast as he could. See, this is our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. He was a human being, and he made mistakes, and he said he made mistakes, and he was the Prophet of God. And if he didn't make mistakes, and if he weren't who he was, I can tell you, I wouldn't have converted to this religion. Because I am so full of faults and mistakes, I needed a prophet who was full of mistakes to show me how to be spiritual despite these faults, you see? So this path of the Naqshbandis then tries to bring us back and bring us aware of these elements in ourselves. So when we say, shall I say, oh no, I don't make mistakes. I don't make mistakes. Oh no, I'm not attracted. I'm not shaken by anger. No, this is nonsense. What kind of a person? We can pretend. There are people who are very good, very sweet, but every human being is a human being. They will have some failing. Only God is perfect. Human beings will have failings, will have faults. And the Sufis say, become the intimate of your fault and use your fault and turn to God. Now, some people say to me, well, what about people who are having a psychotic break? What is their situation? Their situation is sadly, again, that they have, in the reductionist world we live in, they say, oh, yeah, this is an organic situation. This person is having brain chemical problems. But, they fail to add that all of us are changing our own brain chemicals at every moment. And they fail to see it from this other side. Even though I accept this is true. When some people come to me, they say, I wish to study, but I'm taking one of these antidepressants. All I say is, can you still feel your pain? If they say no, I say, I can't work with you. If they say, yes, I can still feel it. I say, very good, fine. See, I need to know what your pain is, because your pain is your path. You are in the land of sorrow to be melted. So if you come and say, I don't want to feel any pain and I'm going to medicate myself so I don't feel pain, I say, well, who's going to help you? Who can help you? You don't wish to go the path of the dervish. You don't wish to feel your pain. You don't wish to feel the pain of others, actually. You don't wish to feel God's pain. So gazing upon the steps is about understanding this journey, this world journey in embodiment. And remaining Muslim meaning remaining a surrenderer. I surrender it. I surrender to the pain. I don't surrender to the vicious act. I feel the thorn in my foot, and God help me, I try not to surrender to slap this person walking next to me, you see. I try to say, no, I'm a Muslim, I surrender to the pain, but not the act. And if I commit the act, I beg God's forgiveness. I will fail sometimes. Huh? I will fail every day. But it's a cultivation of this. And the more that I work with the pain, so I go to the physician, if I go to the psychotherapist or to the Sufi, they are the people of the feet. They are like Jesus. They take the feet and they will wash the feet. They don't say, no, your feet are dirty. Who do you think I am? I'm Jesus. No. They say, I'm Jesus, so give me your feet. I wish to wash your feet. Naqshbandi saw Muhammad Parsa sleeping one day. Muhammad Parsa was a great teacher of the Naqshbandi way, and he knew he had his chance, so he snuck around. You can read about this in the Rashat al-Hayat. He saw him sleeping, and he got his chance, and his students saw him down in the dirt kissing Muhammad Parsa's muddy feet while he was sleeping, because it would be the only chance he would get to kiss his feet. See? But the physician takes the foot and washes it and massages it and feels the foot, wants to feel what is walking on the earth, what is traveling along the majaz. This is the majaz. This is an imaginary world. We are traveling in it. It seems so real. And it will be gone in a moment for each of us. But since you are walking through it, see, this foot could be your heart, is what I mean to say. This foot of yours that is walking, I will take it and wash it and try to find the thorn that's in it and try to pull the thorn out from it so that you can walk more easily in the majaz. You can come back into the illusory world and walk in a better way and achieve your destination. There you will see you had been walking in a great circle. But until you see that, you must walk. So, this principle, gazing upon the steps, is the second of the four principles. The third principle, Safar dar watan, traveling in the homeland. Safar dar watan. Traveling in the homeland, well, by now you already understand. The homeland is where you came from and what you are now, where you are now, traveling in the homeland. Your watan, your original home, is alast, is outside of time. You have left that homeland and you are traveling in its image reflected in a stream. You're traveling in your own homeland as it's reflected in stream water. And if you can wake up, then you can find your way back to your homeland. So you're traveling in the homeland. Now, again, these principles are used in a very ordinary, exoteric sense, in which case the Naqshbandis noticed that their brethren said, oh, please, Sheikh, I want to go on the pilgrimage to see the tomb of so-and-so. And the Sheikh's thinking, why do you want to go on the pilgrimage? Oh, because there's such merit and spirituality if I go on to the pilgrimage. It says, Now that's funny. I was talking to your brother, and he said that you're really bored, and you're kind of fighting with your uncle's family, and you're kind of in a rut. Why is it you want to go on this pilgrimage? See, so when they instituted some of these rules, it was because there was an excess, and pilgrimages were like a great excuse. It's like, let me get away from the wife and the kids. I'm going on a pilgrimage, man. So there was this problem where people were doing all kinds of things in the name of spirituality, and they weren't willing to stay with the majas. So you can have like a vacation from the vacation. See? You can have a journey away from the journey, because all you're really trying to do is really wake up to anything that might be painful or challenging. So one of the reasons I instituted this said, no, you're not allowed to go on the journey. You may be ready one day to go on a journey, but you're not ready to go on the journey. So first you stay here and do the journey here. Travel in your land. And your land is that you see these two principles, they're very related to each other. The last one I mentioned, gazing upon the steps, well, clearly this is about walking and traveling, which means a journey. And now they're talking about safar, which is a journey. Safar dar watan, traveling in the homeland. Watan is your homeland. So it refers both to your original homeland, because you are actually always traveling there. It's like a person dreaming. They're in the bed, and they're moving, and their head is moving, and they have a life there at home, and they have another life in their dream, and at that moment they are traveling in that dream. But they are related. The problem is that in their real life, they said, we have sent into exile the weeping woman. We have sent the weeping woman into exile. We have sent the lost heart. We have sent the terrified one. We have sent them away because they have caused too much chaos in the realm. But then they are burning plastic in the basement, like I said. They will come. You cannot exile them. So they insist. They insist, so they will come into the dreams. They will come in and say, we are part of this house. We are part of this kingdom. We are part of this self. And you will hear us. You will see us. You will. So, Safar dar watan, again, is very deep material, very deep question. We have a little bit of time this morning, as you see, to talk about these principles. I think it's till 10:30 I'm speaking. Is that correct? So the most famous principle is the fourth one. Khilvat dar anjuman. Khilvat dar anjuman. So it means to solitude in the crowd. And this principle, when Bahauddin Naqshband was asked, in fact, what is your path? He was traveling through Herat, and the king there said to him, I wish to ask you, you don't do the loud zikr. You have left a lot of the practices. What exactly is your path? And he says, our path is the path of our great spiritual ancestor, who I mentioned earlier, Abdul Hayy, who made these first 8 principles, and this fourth principle, solitude in the crowd. He said to the king, this is the principle. Now, khilvat has a meaning like it's being in a retreat. It's like being in a silent retreat is normally what it means. It's like being in a silent retreat at the same time that you are in the marketplace and the crowd. And in fact, Naqshband quotes that verse from Quran to this king. He said, if this weren't, the king said, how is this even possible? He says, if it were not possible, why is it in the Quran? The heart of the person who can go in the marketplace and not be moved from the remembrance of God. Now you'll notice that this principle is another principle, But it turns out to be the culmination. We will see in each of the four that the fourth one is actually the end point, the culmination of the previous three principles. Today we're just doing the first four, and this is the culmination. What is the culmination? Is that you would now have enough internal awareness that it would be unbroken and unbreakable. It may vary in intensity. It does vary in intensity, but it is never lost. So if the sage is Taoist, we will read the same thing. In Buddhist, the scriptures say, even in rage, there is enlightenment. In happiness, no matter the emotion, the presence with God is the same. It is still there. It is unbroken. Because the link has been well established. So this process of establishing the link is what we've been talking about, a simultaneous cultivation of what is spiritual within the body, because these first four are about embodiment. God is revealing himself in the body. But also, so you have God's self-description. Self-description, like if he says basit, wase, so he says he's vast, expansive, and so forth. We know, dervishes, we know from our experience that God can make a place so vast inside of our body. Our body is too small for such vastness, but we know this is possible. So God's word is true. On the other hand, embodiment is where we can become smaller than a ball bearing in our rage. See, we can become very one-pointed. We can really get one-pointed. I'm going to get pissed off, or we get full of sorrow. The world is veiled. So you certainly have one-pointed concentration at that moment. Unfortunately, it has made me small, has made me tight, has made me constricted, has made me limited. And this branch of Sufism says, hey, stay with it. Don't say it's not true. Don't say it's not happening. Don't say it's wrong and it's bad. Say, this is what is happening. Stay with it. Bring awareness to it, they say. If you bring awareness, and by awareness I mean the simultaneous awareness of self and God, that's their definition of this kind of awareness. Simultaneous awareness of body, self, and the remembrance of the one who gives us existence. What do they wish? They wish that the human being regains their fundamental connection during this life. They say it makes a big difference. See, normally you might scare somebody and say, oh, if you do bad things, you will burn in hell. I mean, the overt message of the Quran and other scriptures seems to be a great deal about that, But in fact, you read a little bit more deeply, and God says, well, I had to say that because I'm talking about the mirror. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not unjust to you. You're unjust to yourself. I mean, I have to tell you in pretty plain and frightful language what it's like when I put the mirror up in front of you. You're not going to enjoy this. And if you think it's bad in this reflection on the water here, wait till you go into the next realm of the majaz. So if you can reestablish your understanding, if you can destroy the objectification of the world, of your own internal psyche, and the divisions caused by objectification, if you can reunify, if you can regather these aspects of yourself, if you can see the world as diverse aspects of my reality, then you will not be lost. Tell them, Muhammad, about your way. Say to them, this is my way. This is my way. I call you to God according to heart vision and insight. I and any who follow after me. Glory be to God, because I am not one of the idolaters. I was an idolater. I come from a tribe of idolaters. But how can I be an idolater if each thing I look at is no longer separate, but it's like looking at water in each and every plant, seeing the plant and seeing the water. When I look anywhere, I see the thing and I see the light. You see? Famous verse at the end of Joseph, huh? قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَىٰ اللَّهِ عَلَىٰ بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي سُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. That's at the end of Joseph, near the end of Joseph. So this is the verse that is used in initiation of a teacher very often. So if you're in a silsila, then this is the verse saying, do you accept that you are following in this path? Because in this verse, God says, orders Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, say to them, Muhammad, this is my path. Tell them what your path is, to call them to God according to heart seeing. Heart seeing is a very special idea. It's like the poem of Rumi's I quoted earlier, huh? Dar gudoz in jumlatan ra, dar basar, dar nazara, dar nazara, dar nazar. Melt this, all of this body, this embodiment, melt it in vision, basar. Dar nazara, dar nazara, dar nazar. Go and see, or go and vision, you see. So this spiritual vision is what these practices are trying to reactivate. If we could reactivate the spiritual vision, he's speaking, of course, of an awareness of the heart, then why should such a heart be afraid of a cactus plant? It too has water. It's beautiful. Don't get too close, but it's beautiful, see? Why should the rose be preferred? Well, yes, there's fragrance, delicacy. So the rose has its virtues, doesn't it? But so does the cactus. And the way the Naqshbandis see it is there's a very great project beyond our conception called the Infinity Project. In the Infinity Project, it would be inconceivable that you should not see a cactus plant. It would be inconceivable that you should not see pure love. It would be inconceivable that you would now see, well, forgive me for picking one at random, Hitler, for example. You would even see that Hitler was this amazing exemplification of the attenuation of love and mercy. See, without Hitler and others of his type, how could you know as much about love? The Infinity Project, you see, according to the Naqshbandis, this is part of a large, inconceivable project, inconceivable reality. And each of us is like nothing, like a piece of dust. We now find out that planet Earth, I'm afraid, is in the same boat, let alone the galaxy, you see. That's why I meant last night, different mind, huh? We have a different mind. How can we believe in absolutes in the same way? But luckily in the Sufi way, each piece of dust is amazingly the center of all of it. Like in physics with light, such, each piece of dust, no matter how strange, weird, veiled or enlightened, is at the center of everything. So today we're looking at these first 4 principles that concern embodiment, awareness of the breath. As we breathe, we should visualize spirit coming in and out. But if you don't, maybe there's something else, huh? Is there some sadness, some fear, something unresolved, some grieving, something? And according to the Sufis, this is part of the journey. This must be understood. In his story of the chickpea, Rumi, it's a well-known story. I know all of you readers of the Masnavi are very familiar with it, huh? And Rumi likes to pun. He's an amazing, sometimes even he overdoes it. But in this particular story, he's talking about the chickpea, the garbanzo, and it's cooking in a pot. And he's saying, and the chickpea doesn't like it. So it's coming up and it's complaining. Why are you treating me so badly? You came to the market. He's talking to the lady of the house. You bought me. Why are you now? You put me in this pot and you're pushing me under and you're pushing me into the heat and you're cooking it. And the lady of the house says, oh, no, you don't understand. It's not that I don't love you. I love you, but you have a destiny. You have to be cooked. And when you're cooked, you will become digestible and you will serve a greater body. You will go from being a chickpea to actually becoming part of a body, and that body will become awareness. Awareness. And you see in Persian, so nahud is a word for chickpea. It also, and Rumi makes the pun of nahud, without self. You see, you should really be nahud. You should really be a chickpea. I mean, you should really be nothing. And he said that you should be a Muslim. Being a Muslim means accepting this. So there's one example in this story, if you look. There's so many places in the Masnavi. I was looking at with friends lately, and where he talks about sadness and thoughts visiting. He said, what do you really want? Sunshine all the time? It would burn the crops of your land. If the sun didn't come, if the sun didn't get clouded over and the clouds didn't bring rain, then your land, your watan, would be burned. You need to have the alternation. So when we're practicing these exercises and spirituality, especially in a more Western setting, where people have, first of all, more experience, perhaps, of psychology and perhaps psychotherapy even, they can understand them more in this new way of including traditional Sufi psychology, Sufi approach. They don't have to reject, in other words, the effective psychological approaches that this culture has offered to us in this last 100 years or so. On the contrary, they can be brought in and integrated. And it is not a contrary to everything I've said to you today. In a different context, in the north of Afghanistan, there's a more religious language, etc. But I assure you, the elder Sufis that I worked with, they had a heart of compassion towards people's faults and people's weaknesses, and they did not believe in shutting these off or suppressing or making judgments, you see. So I thank you very much for your time, and I will give the podium to Kabir Jan.